Every Sunday for 11 years, Thomas Greer drove to the same diner in Memphis, sat in the same booth, ordered the same coffee, and spent 2 hours doing nothing except being somewhere his son knew about, just in case. He had told his son Marcus about the diner in a letter written in 2012, the year after the silence had become permanent. He had written, "If you ever want to find me, I'll be at Mel's Diner on Southern Avenue, Sunday morning, 9 to 11, booth by the window. I'll be there." He hadn't told anyone else. He'd just gone. 52 Sundays a year for 11 years. Marcus never came. Thomas kept going. He had applied to Family Feud in January 2023 because his daughter, Marcus's half-sister, whom Marcus had never met, had applied on behalf of the whole family, and Thomas had said yes without thinking too hard about it, because he tried to say yes to things now, and because he didn't know. He didn't know that Marcus Greer, 38 years old, had applied to Family Feud from Nashville with his own family 6 months earlier, also not thinking too hard about it. He didn't know that the scheduling algorithm at Family Feud had placed them on the same tape day. He didn't know any of it until round 2, when Marcus walked to the podium for the face-off, and Thomas Greer, 3 feet away, looked into the face of his son for the first time in 11 years. Steve Harvey saw what happened to both men. He stopped everything. It was a Friday in May 2023, and the Family Feud studio in Atlanta had 2 families who had arrived separately, checked in separately, been held in separate green rooms, which was standard, to preserve the competitive energy of the show, and who had not, in the ordinary course of the morning, seen each other. Thomas Greer, 61, had come from Memphis with his daughter Angela, 29, her husband Paul, Thomas's sister Dorothy, and Dorothy's son Christopher. Thomas worked at a hardware store, had worked there for 14 years since losing his contracting business in the 2008 recession, which was also the year his marriage had ended, which was also the year he and Marcus had stopped speaking in any meaningful way. The cause was not one thing. The cause was 12 things at once, and an inability to say the right things in the right order when the window was open, and then the window closing, and then years of nobody opening it again. Marcus Greer, 38, had come from Nashville with his wife Keisha, his son Jordan, who was 14, his mother-in-law Vera, and his colleague and friend Antoine. Marcus was an accountant. He had built a solid practice over 10 years. He was stable, grounded, loved. He had also carried the particular weight that sons carry when fathers are simultaneously gone and not gone, not dead, not vanished, just absent in the specific, voluntary way that makes it hard to know what to feel. He knew about Mel's Diner. He had reread the letter more than once. He had not gone. He was not entirely sure why he had not gone. He had been 30% sure he would go for about 9 of the 11 years. He had not gone. The first round of Family Feud had run normally. Both families were sharp, competitive, warm with the audience. Steve Harvey had done the introduction rounds separately, each family at their podium, and the moment of seeing each other for the first time had been the moment the families entered the stage from opposite wings, which was standard. Neither Thomas nor Marcus had been looking at the opposing podium at that exact moment. The game had started before either of them had looked. Round 1 had gone to the Greer-Memphis family by a narrow margin. Angela had been particularly fast on the buzzer. Marcus's wife Keisha had matched her on 2 answers. Jordan, Marcus's 14-year-old son, had given an answer in the first round that was the number 2 survey response, and had been celebrated by both families, because some games, in their early energy, produce that kind of generosity. And then, round 2 began. Thomas Greer walked to the center podium for the face-off. Marcus Greer walked to the center podium for the face-off. They looked at each other. The studio fell completely silent. Not because anything had been said, because of what happened to both men's faces. The faces of people who recognize each other in places they did not expect to be recognized. The faces of people doing math they didn't know they'd have to do today. Steve Harvey was in the middle of reading the next question. He stopped mid-sentence. He looked at Thomas. He looked at Marcus. He looked at both of them for a long moment, reading what was happening between them with the particular attention of a man who has stood between a lot of families and knows what he is seeing. "Gentlemen," Steve said carefully, "do you two know each other?" Thomas Greer's jaw worked. He did not speak. Marcus Greer said very quietly, "He's my father." The studio was absolutely silent. But Steve wasn't done watching, he said to himself, then caught himself and addressed the room. "We're going to stop for a second." He stepped back. He let both men stand there. He did not rush it. Thomas Greer had both hands on the podium. He was looking at his son, at 38-year-old Marcus, who had his mother's mouth and his own eyes, and who had grown into a person Thomas had watched from a very specific distance in the way that estranged parents do. Social media glimpses, second-hand reports, the annual confirmation that Marcus was alive and employed and not needing anything Thomas could provide. Marcus was looking at his father, at 61-year-old Thomas, who was thinner than Marcus remembered and had gray in his hair, and who was standing at a game show podium in Memphis colors, having shown up, the way Thomas had always shown up to things that didn't matter. The way Thomas had not always shown up to things that did. 11 years of silence, standing 3 feet apart on a game show stage. Steve Harvey walked to the center. He stood between them. "Thomas," he said quietly, "when did you last speak to your son?" 11 years ago, Thomas said. "A phone call. I said the wrong thing." He hung up. He paused. "I didn't call back." Steve looked at Marcus. "Marcus, what would you have needed him to do?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. His wife Keisha, at the family podium, had both hands pressed together at her mouth. "Call back," Marcus said. "That's all. Just call back." Thomas Greer put both hands over his face. The studio held its breath. Steve Harvey looked at both of them for a long time. Then he said, "Thomas, there's a phone in my pocket, and there's a man 3 feet away who needed a phone call 11 years ago. It's a little late, but I'm asking you if you're ready to make it." Thomas lowered his hands. His face had been through every expression available to it. "Yes," he said. "I've been ready for 11 years. "Then turn around," Steve said, "and talk to your son." Thomas Greer turned to Marcus Greer. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He started again. "I didn't call back," he said. I was ashamed. I'd gotten everything wrong for years, and I didn't know how to say that without it sounding like an excuse. So I didn't call. And then it was a week, and then a month, and then a year, and then it was the thing that was too big to do." He looked at his son. "I went to Mel's every Sunday. I went for 11 years. I thought if you knew where I was, when you were ready." Marcus looked at his father. Something shifted in his face. Something large and very old and very tired shifting. The way things shift when they've been held in one position for too long. "I knew," he said. "I knew where you were." Thomas went still. "I drove past once," Marcus said. "I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, and then I drove home." He paused. "I wasn't ready." "Are you ready now?" Thomas asked. A long silence. "Yeah," Marcus said. "I think I might be." The studio fell apart. All 300 people, the crews along the walls. The competing families, though there were no longer competing families in any meaningful sense, there were 2 families and 1 story. Thomas Greer and his son Marcus were crying in the unguarded way of men who have run out of reasons not to. Steve Harvey had walked to the edge of the stage. He stood with his back to the room. He turned around with wet eyes and made no effort to conceal them. "Let me tell you something," he said. "I know what it is to let time take something that you meant to address. I know what it is to let a month become a year and a year become a decade, because the doing of the thing seemed harder than the waiting. I know that feeling. And I know that the window doesn't stay open forever." He looked at both men. "You got lucky today. You ran into each other in the only place neither of you expected to be. Take that. Use it." He pulled out his phone. He called his family mediation partner, a licensed therapist who specialized in long-term estrangement, live on stage, and committed to covering a full year of family counseling for both branches of the Greer family, in person or virtual, starting within 2 weeks. He committed to airfare for 3 in-person sessions in neutral cities if distance was a barrier. He said it on air, completely, so everyone heard. He announced both families were receiving the full prize packages and noted, to audible laughter and more audible tears, that today the Greer family had won both prizes regardless of the scoreboard, because they were the same family. Angela, Thomas's daughter, Marcus's half-sister who had never met him, walked to the center of the stage and extended her hand to Marcus. "I've wanted a brother my whole life," she said. Marcus looked at her. "Hi," he said. The room went loud in a way that contained everything. Jordan, Marcus's 14-year-old son, Thomas's grandson, who had not been told about the estrangement before this trip, because Marcus had not known how to explain it, stood at the family podium and watched his father shake hands with a grandfather he had never known existed. His expression was 14 years old, doing the math of something bigger than 14 years, which is the face children make when they are growing in real time. The episode aired 10 weeks after the taping, with both families' full consent and extensive producer conversations about how the story should be told. The clip of Steve saying "call back" and Thomas turning to his son was viewed 220 million times in 16 days. The hashtag Mel's Diner trended globally. Thousands of people posted about their own estrangements, their own parking lots, their own moments of almost. 3 months after that Friday, Thomas and Marcus Greer had their first phone call. 1 hour and 40 minutes. They talked about the diner. They talked about why Marcus hadn't walked in. They talked about why Thomas had stayed. They talked about the wrong thing Thomas had said 11 years ago, and what had made it wrong, and what Marcus had needed to hear instead, and why Thomas hadn't known how to say it. They talked about all of it. It was not easy. It was not complete. It was a beginning. A year after the taping, the Mel's Diner Fund was established, named for the place where a father had waited 11 years, dedicated to supporting long-term estrangement reconciliation programs, providing therapy access, mediation services, and safe re-entry support for families attempting to rebuild after years of silence. Its motto, "The window is still open. Walk through it." In its first year, the fund helped over 500 estranged families access mediation support. Today, Thomas Greer still goes to Mel's Diner on Sunday mornings. But now, sometimes, Marcus is already there. Steve Harvey, in a later interview, said 2 men applied separately to a game show, were scheduled on the same day, assigned to the same studio, and walked to the same podium at the same time. I don't know what you call that. I call it something that needed to happen, and I'm grateful I was standing there when it did. Some fathers keep a booth by the window for 11 years, just in case. Some sons sit in the parking lot for 20 minutes and then drive home. And then one day, in a studio in Atlanta, on a random Friday in May, the game stops and the real thing begins. Both of them showed up. That was always all it was going to take. If this story about a father, a son, and 11 years of almost moved you, subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. Share this with someone who has been meaning to walk through a door they've been standing outside of for too long. Have you ever almost done the thing, and then done it anyway, when the time was finally right? Share your story in the comments and ring that notification bell, because as Thomas and Marcus proved, it is never too late to walk through the window, even if it took 11 years to get to the door.